Welcome back to another episode of the Move to Spain podcast. You know me, John Towell from justlawsolicitors.com, and we have Ivan making another appearance. I'm not sure which number it is, Ivan, but welcome back.
It's been several already, but I'm glad you're having me. Thanks you very much.
Yeah. Ivan is one of two of our specialist immigration lawyers, speaking English, Spanish, Russian, whatever you need for immigration in Spain. And like we always say, if you need to speak to Ivan or Anna, they're both the same, both lawyers. You click on the top right-hand side of the justlawsolicitors.com website and you can go directly and have an appointment with Ivan to talk about whatever you want. Hopefully it's immigration law, but if you want to talk about the weather in Malaga with Ivan and pay him, then fair enough.
It will be my
Okay.
pleasure as well.
Now, Ivan, we're going to discuss today all about how you become a citizen after you've been resident in Spain. But of course, events overtake us, and sometimes we hear potentially good news that's been released by the Spanish government. So we have a little bit of good news that could possibly be a thing in the future, don't we?
Exactly.
So what is it?
Well, it seems that the Social Party, along with its political allies, intend to approve and publish a royal decree for the extraordinary regularization of immigrants in Spain, from which it is estimated that around 500,000 people could benefit.
Right. So say, for example, if you give me an example, I'm British or American, Canadian, whatever, listening to this podcast. What circumstances, if it does become law, would I be able to benefit? What would be my circumstances?
Well, absolutely. There's nothing certain yet, but it seems that the requirements that have been announced include having entered and been present in Spain before December 31st of 2025, and being able to provide a continuous stay of at least 5 months at the time of the application, without leaving, of course. And the applicants must also lack a relevant criminal record.
Right. So basically, would I have had to come in the July to the December to be potentially included in this, or would it be any period?
Well, ideally, you see, imagine you have to enter before the 31st of December 2025. There's not a specific period, as long as you can prove that by the time of the application in 2026, you have been staying for at least for 5 months
Right.
uninterruptedly.
Right. So, if for some reason you haven't paid any attention to Ivan and Anna and you know nothing of the 90-day rule, visas have gone over your head, you've never paid any attention to that, and somehow you've potentially overstayed, then you might be protected by this future law, which hopefully is going to come into force at some point in the future. Like Ivan said, the Spanish government have done the royal decree. So, but yeah, that's how it is. I mean, we don't have the boy because it's going to be written in a boy like every other law, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah,
The
when the
official
boy
Spanish Gazette.
when the boy comes out, the BOE, Ivan and Anna will study it and we'll be able to go into more detail. But if you're living under the radar, so to speak, and we don't condone that or approve of it or anything like that, but if you find yourself in those circumstances, it may be that there's some hope for you going forward in the future. But that's all we can really say about this because I suppose Ivan shares my view as a lawyer, but it's very difficult to comment on things that aren't the law yet, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We have enough to do. Right. Okay, so back to the podcast. So today we're going to be talking about how you become a citizen after you're being resident. Now, what people need to know is that by being a resident,
Absolutely. I'll take it from here then. Well, mainly, the applicants must demonstrate legal, continuous, and immediate prior residence, on top of good civil conduct and sufficient degree of integration.
right.
Depending on the applicant's personal situation and circumstances, there are several routes and durations that they must meet in order to obtain it.
Right. Because I know that if we go back to the starting point, some legal residents, so this is people who are here on a, for example, on a visa, some legal
Yes.
residents have to spend longer in Spain than others before they can get Spanish citizenship.
That is absolutely correct, John. And the main periods are, depending on the circumstances, 1 year, 2 years, 5, or 10.
Right.
And if you like, I'd like to speak about all of them.
Yeah, well, let's look at the people who would fall into the category of 1 year. Who would they be, for example?
Absolutely. Well, in this specific case, it applies to six scenarios. Firstly, individuals born in Spanish territory qualify regardless of their parents' nationality, due to their link created by birth on Spanish soil. That is the first one. Then we have the
Right.
second group, who did not duly exercise their right to acquire Spanish nationality by option, can also apply. So to say, it expires. So to say, this possibility of requesting the citizenship by option usually expires at when the applicant turns 20 years old, unless the legal age in the country is above 18. For example, if the applicant is 19 years, country considers the people are like legal adults from 19 or 20, they'll have from that moment onward to up to 2 years to exercise this right to
Right.
for option.
So, what would be
So,
an example of that?
well, for example, imagine this. An applicant's parent was a Spanish citizen, but not an original citizen, not born, or if original, not born in Spain, but was a
Right.
Spanish citizen. They have
Right. So,
until the
my
20
father,
years of age. Yes,
yeah,
sorry.
so my father moved to Spain later on in life and became a Spanish citizen.
Yes, yes, exactly. So, but what is the question? Sorry.
So, if we just have an example of um, the kind of person who would qualify for the 1 year, would that be somebody?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Allow me to explain. Imagine this situation. For example, a man or a woman moves to abroad, United States, United Kingdom, marries, and have a child. This child so to say, is a Spanish citizen, original Spanish citizen by right of blood, so to say, jus sanguinis, and
Right.
therefore
Yeah.
they're considered Spanish citizens. They can retrieve, and they can retrieve their Spanish citizenship at any time in their life because their parents were born in Spain and were original Spanish citizens. But
Right.
although this man or this woman, since they were a child of Spanish citizens but were born abroad, they are an original citizen but are not born in Spain. Therefore, their children, for example, in let's see, say France or Portugal, well, not exactly, maybe United Kingdom and United States. Um, the child of the grandchild of original Spanish citizen born in Spain, so say the child of the Spanish citizen, original Spanish citizen that was not born in Spain, uh, they actually have until they turn 20 years of age in order to request their citizenship by option.
Right. Okay. So, my father is Spanish. He goes to live in the United States. I'm his child. Then I can do it. And also, my children can do it up until they get legal age.
Exactly. And
Right.
up to 2 years after, like once they turn 18, they have 18 and 19
Right.
to
Okay.
exercise this
Yeah.
procedure.
Right. Okay. And they would have to have a year's residency in Spain to get that.
Well, that's for example for the option. That's for the option for which the residence is not required. But if they fail to submit the application before they turn 20 years old, these children, then they can reside in Spain for up to a year
Right.
uninterruptedly, and then request
All
the
right.
citizenship via residence.
Right. So they have two goes at it, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah. So okay, well that's interesting. So the people who have to do 2 years legal residence before they get Spanish citizenship, what sort of examples could we put in that category?
Well, absolutely. This 2 year period residence is based on deep historical, cultural, and linguistic connections. It applies automatically to nationals of Ibero-American countries, Spanish or and Portuguese speaking, such as Brazil, for example, even,
Yeah.
and Andorra, Philippines, Equatorial Guinea, and Portugal.
Right. Yeah. See.
This
Yeah. So
this same
basically,
sorry.
it's places where I don't want to use the word colony or possession because I might get into trouble. I don't know the right word, but places where, as you said, the historical connections, and people think, oh, former Spanish. I don't want to use the word colonies, but colonies. But in addition to that, it's very interesting because it includes um, Brazil and Portugal and Equatorial Guinea,
Exactly.
which was Spanish. So yeah, so those people would come to Spain for 2 years. They have to do the same visa as everybody else. You know, you don't get a magic pass on the visa, but after
Absolutely
two
correct.
years, you can apply for Spanish citizenship. Whereas, for example, say it was me starting from scratch with no connection
Exactly.
whatsoever to Spain from the UK, I would have to do 10, year, 10 years, wouldn't I?
Exactly. For
Yeah,
example, for UK citizen or US citizen, Russia, Morocco, most countries of the world would have to wait for at least 10 years of uninterrupted
right,
residence in order to obtain their
right.
citizenship in Spain.
Yeah. So that's an example of the people that would do 2 years. And everybody does ask about Puerto Rico, but it does include people from Puerto Rico, doesn't it?
Well, it actually does indeed, yes. Although, well, it's how would you say it? Since there's a specific situations with them. You see, they have a U.S. passport, but there's actually a certificate that they can request from local authorities, justifying their birth or residence in Puerto Rican area. Well, mainly their birth and residence, in order to make them eligible for the 2 years period residence as well.
Yeah. So if you're from Puerto Rico, happy days because you don't need to do 10 years, you only need to do two. And of course, if we go, it isn't really the purpose of this podcast, but you only need to do 5 years to get permanent residency. But obviously, the Puerto Ricans, the Brazilian citizens, Mexico, etc., they only have to do 2 years. Okay. So you mentioned as well 5 years. What about the people who would have to do 5 years? Who would they be?
Exactly. Well, this pathway was designed for a particularly vulnerable group, persons who have been granted official refugee status by Spain.
Right.
The reduced 5 years period acknowledged their situations, and unfortunately, this implies that often they cannot safely obtain their documents from their country of origin. Therefore, Spanish law accommodates this by allowing the documentation issued by the Ministry of the Interior that certifies refugee status to substitute for the standard requirements.
So, say, what would that be? I mean, I don't want to talk about wars and politics, but if I came from a country and I was granted refugee status in Spain, and then I wasn't able to get my documents because, you know, everything's gone amiss in that country, to put it mildly, then I would be able to get citizenship after 5 years.
Exactly. That
Right.
is absolutely
Okay.
correct.
And that doesn't include anybody from the UK or the USA fleeing the government.
No,
We say no more on that. Okay.
not
And
yet.
yeah, don't write that in the Move to Spain Facebook group. You're not included. You have to suck it up. Okay. So the 10-year people, I think we've sort of touched on that before. That would be somebody, for example, from the United States who doesn't
Exactly.
have any Spanish relatives and they live in Spain legally with a visa for 5 years. Then they get permanent residency after 5 years if they want. And then after 10 years, they apply for citizenship if they want.
Exactly.
Yeah, that would be
This is
that.
the default and most common pathway. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean that's what people. What's the difference between obviously after 5 years in sort of a case of somebody like I've just said can apply for permanent residency. What's the difference in permanent residency and citizenship, like on a practical level?
Like in a practical level, residence, so the residence actually allows you to reside legally in a country, but it does not grant you citizenship by default. Citizenship means that you are a citizen of that specific country. Like
Right,
a citizen does not require any permit for or residence to reside there legally. It's their
right,
birthright, so to say, or not birthright, or it's a right acquired after obtaining their citizenship. Since
right.
not everyone obtains it by birth.
Just looking at something on a practical level, obviously there's no more bureaucracy or forms. I get my Spanish passport and I come and go. But would I also, and I don't want to use the word free, but I wouldn't have to pay for the public health care anymore, would I? as a
No.
citizen.
As a Spanish,
Y-
as a Spanish citizen, absolutely, you'd have to get your DNI card, which is the ID for Spanish citizen, and your passport,
Mm,
and then you just can freely register at the institutions and
right.
at the offices, and you'll be eligible.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not the purpose of this podcast, but most people who come to Spain, they have to pay for private insurance in year one. There are
Absolutely
some
correct.
there are some exceptions. If you're a employee, self-employed, UK pensioners might get what's called the S1. But in year two, if you want, you can pay and join the public system, or you can carry on with private health insurance. But what we're saying now, and again, it's not Ivan doesn't sell health insurance. We don't sell health insurance. After 10 years, you would no longer have to pay into the public system. So there you go. And as Ivan said before, with a Spanish passport, there's nothing to apply for anymore,
Exactly.
nothing like that.
As a Spanish
Yeah,
citizen, the Social Security assistance becomes your right, and you're
yeah.
no longer required a private health insurance.
And another thing would be if you found yourself without any money, or you became a pensioner, you would get something from the Spanish government as a citizen, wouldn't you?
Well, we'd have to double check everything, and it will depend on this applicant's specific situation. But
Yeah,
yes, they'll be covered by
possible.
the Social Security scheme,
Yeah. I mean,
although the
you're not.
requirements may vary from one applicant to another.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you're not going to get rich people. Don't rely on this as your pension plan. And we are politically neutral on this podcast, whether or not that's a good or a bad thing. We're not going to comment. We're just going to tell you about the fact that it could happen. So, say for example, we've discussed. I think it's one, two, three, four different categories of people. Just before I go on to the next question I have for you, Ivan, is what happens if I'm the spouse of a Spanish citizen? How do I become a Spanish citizen?
Absolutely. Well, the spouses also fall within the 1 year
Oh,
group.
okay.
So
Oh,
say,
that's good. Yeah.
absolutely. They can apply after 1 year of marriage, provided the couple is not legally separated, of course, and
Yeah.
after 1 year of an interrupted residence in Spain while being married. So authorities usually scrutinize these applications to confirm the marriage authenticity. And with cohabitation being a critical factor typically, it's usually proven by a shell municipal registration, or also known as padrón in Spanish.
Right. Okay. So the padron is like a document that you get that shows you live in a particular place.
Yeah, exactly. Like you get it from the town hall. It's usually pretty straightforward. Forward. You
Right.
can usually go to the town hall office, and they usually assist you with that. There are
Right.
also two other groups that I like to mention for
Okay.
the 1 year residence. Also, there's the fifth group, which is the widow or widower of a Spanish citizen that may also apply after 1 year, provided that they were not separated at the time of the spouse's death, of course. This
Right.
recognizes the enduring family link even after the Spanish citizen's passing. And there's also another group, the final one, the individuals who have been born outside of Spain to a parent or grandparent parent who was originally Spanish and can reclaim this nationality after 1 year of residence. Usually, this pathway allows descendants to reclaim a lost heritage by documenting their lineage with official certificates from Spanish civil registries.
Right. So can I just stop you there? Um,
Of course.
I'm only an English lawyer, and I just get everything through the talking to the lawyers. But wasn't the law that says I can get my citizenship through my grandparents, didn't that end in October 2025? Or is this something different?
Exactly. It is something different. I'll explain. You see, you were speaking about the Spanish Democratic Memory Law that,
Yeah.
unfortunately, as you've pointed out, ended on 22nd of October. And that citizenship did not require residence. However, in this case, for example, a residence of 1 year is specifically required, and you do not get sort of an original citizenship as the one with the Spanish Democratic Memory Law. This one is by residence, citizenship
Okay.
by residence. Although
Okay.
only for a year, it's not as so to say as protected as the original one, or the original one granted by this democratic memory law.
Okay. So can we have an example of someone falling into that category?
Absolutely. For example, you see, how could you explain this? Usually, For example, imagine this the same scenario as with the first example. A Spanish citizen Spanish citizen moved to another country, UK, United States, and
Yeah.
their child grows there. Their child is can retrieve their citizenship by option at any time. He's an original citizen, and so say in practice, and his parent can actually either register him with the consulate civil registry directly after his birth, or he can try to retrieve it after by option at some point in his life if he was not registered at the consulate at the time of his birth.
Right.
He has no restrictions. This child has no restrictions. He can retrieve it even when he becomes 16 years old, 17,
Yeah.
18, 19. The law allows them to retrieve it at any time on their life. However, this child, imagine this, has another child, the grandchild of the Spanish citizen, the original one that was born in
Yeah.
Spain.
Yeah.
And since their parent was an original citizen because he got it by option or by being registered with the consulate by the time of his birth, but he was not born in Spain. The option procedure does not apply to that grandchild after they reach 20 years of age. Imagine
Right.
this: the
Yeah.
child is 21 years old. They reach legal adulthood, so to say, by the age of 18, and they forgot to exercise their right to also get Spanish citizenship.
Right.
Because, because
Yeah.
their parent was not born in Spain, although being born to an original Spanish citizen born in Spain, they no longer can exercise the option procedure and therefore can only rely on the residence of 1 year.
Right.
Uninterrupted residence 1 year in Spain in
Right.
order to obtain the citizenship.
Right. So if you've got Spanish parents, grandparents, or you've got children and you are under 18, think about it. Take advice from Ivan or Anna because the time's running for them. You just be very careful on that. We just wanted to flag that up. Okay, so say for example, I get to the point where I can apply for Spanish citizenship. Now, the first thing is I don't have to if I don't want to, do I?
Absolutely, you can. You can extend your current residence permit
Yeah.
and extend it indefinitely after a
Right.
certain period of time. But it's beneficial to obtain the Spanish citizenship if you qualify
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah. We did write an article. It's beyond the scope of this particular podcast, but we did write an article on the website justlawsolicitors.com about dual citizenship. So if you just Google just law solicitors, separate words, obviously, and then dual, and then citizenship, separate words, in Google, it'll come up, and you can read about dual citizenship and having two passports at once and all that kind of thing. But we're not going to talk about that today. Okay, so I've made the decision that I'm going to be, or I want to be, a Spanish citizen, and I'm from, for example, the UK or Canada or America. What do I need to do?
Well, regardless of the residency period, all adult applicants must formally prove their integration into Spanish society, primarily through two mandatory exams administered by the Instituto Cervantes, which are
Right. So,
known as the CCSE, which is a test of knowledge about Spanish government, law, society, and culture, for example, and the DELE, which is the exam that certifies Spanish language proficiency at a minimum of level A2.
so if we call the first exam the exam all about Spain and culture and everything, is that only in Spanish?
What do you mean? Sorry.
So if I take if I say okay, I'm going to do it, the first exam which talks about Spanish, which is about Spanish culture and things like that, is that exam in Spanish?
Yes, unfortunately, yes. It
Yeah.
consists of
Well, it makes
25
sense.
questions,
Yeah.
and in
How
order
many
to pass,
questions?
you have to 25 in total,
Right.
as for now. And in order to pass, you have to get right at least 15, which is a
Right.
60%.
So they would talk, they would say like, I don't know, what are the origins of the Spanish Civil War, something like that, or Spanish history and culture.
Mostly, yes.
Yeah.
Spanish
Okay.
constitution, cultural knowledge, and a bit of historical.
Right. Okay. And the second exam is a Spanish language exam. I mean, that makes sense as well. That's going to be in Spanish.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, yes.
absolutely. Yeah, it makes sense. Obviously, you're going to be a
Although,
Spanish citizen. You have to speak Spanish. So where do you do these exams? Do you have to go somewhere to do them, or how does it work?
well, either by in specific establishment or sort of say created, or on a specific dates on different or maybe in a specific institutions that have a specific dates for these exams, or go to Instituto Cervantes main how do you say it main so to say so the main building in Madrid. I
Right.
I
Yeah.
just forgot the name.
Yeah. So you physically go to a place, and like you were at school, you sit the exam.
Exactly.
Yeah. And presumably there's resources, and it's out the scope of this podcast, but there'll be resources to learn about, Spanish culture, of course. And after 10 years, let's hope that you can speak Spanish. If not, you're going to have to get some Spanish lessons from somewhere. So I would guess with the Spanish language exam, if I'm from, say, I don't know, Argentina, Bolivia, somewhere, and I speak Spanish, do I still need to do that exam?
That is one of the exemptions, absolutely.
Right.
It's usually not, there are several exemptions. For example, it's not required for individuals under the 18 years of age, or for those with legally modified capacity, such as being, for example, under guardianship due to disability or incapacity. And it is also applicable to nationals of Ibero-American countries that you've
Right.
mentioned.
Oh, so that's quite interesting then, because if I'm 17, I don't have to do the language exam. But if I get over 18, then I do have to do the language exam.
Well, it will be depending on the situation. They actually are exemption not just for the language exam, but the social cultures as well. For
Oh,
example, for
wow.
those so to
Oh,
say, an order was issued on 2016 in implementing a royal decree, and established that since certain groups of people are exempt from these exams, such as
oh,
those who cannot read or write, for example, people with learning difficulties, or individuals who have been schooled in Spain, for example, and have completed mandatory secondary education.
right. Okay. So that would make sense as well. You've been to Spanish school. There's no point you going to pass an exam in Spanish culture and the Spanish language. Okay. So,
Exactly. And in your case, for example, for the people with disabilities over 18 years of age, for example, what Instituto de Cervantes usually guarantees is that they usually support and make adjustment during the exams. So they can take
right,
them, so these groups of people can take them under conditions of effective equality.
right. Okay. So to become a citizen, there's two exams. There's the culture one and the language one, and some people may be exempt from those exams. Okay, so let's assume that I've been to Madrid and I've passed my exams. What do I need to do then?
Well, once you've passed your exam, you need to go into the civil registry office, or submit the information electronically. Although I suggest to go through the civil registry of the
Yeah,
municipality of your residence in Spain. There's quite an exhaustive list of documents that we'll be happy to assist the applicants with. But
yeah,
for example, despite a legal resolution period of 1 year, as of now, the system still suffers from a massive backlog. Unfortunately,
right,
this is due to the fact that there was a shift from the original system to the digital one between 2015 and 2017. Sorry.
right,
And reports indicate that at some point, actually, a handful of officials were responsible for hundreds of thousands of files. Therefore, waiting periods of 4 or 5 years might be common.
right. Okay, so once you pass your exam, it's far from instantaneous. But remember, if you listen to this podcast, we're recording this podcast in January 2026, and it's going to go out in March 2026. So this podcast is going to be here forever. So always take qualified legal advice from somebody like Ivan or Anna with Spanish bar registration, because it might not be the case when you actually get round to listening to this podcast. So you fill out, you provide the documents, you fill the documents out, you send them off, and then is the next thing you get your Spanish passport, or is there something else?
Exactly. Well, the final step also revolves around an oath or promise of allegiance before the civil register official,
Oh, right. Okay.
where the new
That
citizen
makes
usually
sense.
swears or promises fidelity to the king and obedience to the Spanish constitution and laws.
Ah, okay,
At
of
this
course.
moment,
Yeah.
they're generally required to renounce their prior nationality.
Right. And then again, um, Google just law solicitors and dual citizenship, because there's a big article on that, and it's not
Absolutely.
exactly what you think. And I don't want to start quoting it because it was written by a Spanish lawyer at the law firm, and you need to like pay careful attention to that. But it's not as cut and dried as you think it is. I'll say no. I'll say no more on that. But renouncing it, well, maybe not. That's as far as I'm going to go on the on that. But as always, take independent legal advice, and there's lots of other things to need you need to consider that are again beyond the scope of this podcast. There's things like when you're living in Spain as a resident or a citizen, you have to file Spanish taxes. We have a tax advisor who can help you with that. You could find yourself tax resident in two different countries, but most countries have a double taxation agreement with Spain, so you don't pay twice. Buying or owning a property, it doesn't make a difference whether you're a Spanish citizen or not. It's staying there for a long period of time. Yeah, speak to Ivan and Anna about that. There's the healthcare, which becomes inverted commas free when you become a Spanish citizen. And when you're a Spanish citizen, you'll be able to vote as well, won't you? Hello?
Sorry, John, I lost you for a few seconds there.
Yeah, I was just saying that when you become a Spanish citizen, you will be able to vote, of course.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Is
Either
there
while
anything?
abroad, while residing abroad, or from Spain if you're residing in Spain.
Yeah. I mean, is there anything else that we need to add? I think we've got through everything, haven't we? Is there
So
anything
do
else
I,
that...
John.
Okay,
Absolutely. I
well, there
think
you
we've
go.
covered everything.
We've reached a consensus. Right. So, well, this goes out in March, and we're having the not so good weather in Malaga, but that's just comparative to everywhere else in the world. 15 in Malaga is not horrendous, but yeah, we're getting a little bit of rain, so that's going to be good. All the reservoirs are going to be full. All the farmers are going to be happy, I suppose. There you go. Okay, so as always, take independent legal advice, whatever you're doing in Spain. If you want to speak directly on an immigration matter, just go to the top of the website and click on the link for immigration consultations. If you're buying a property, take advice from us. Make sure that you don't sign or pay anything. If you'd like to talk to Belen, just send us an email or a WhatsApp or whatever. Belen's head of property law. Anything that if you've got legal cases, we've got litigation department, taxes, probate, forming companies, taxes, everything. We're here for everything, and Ivan is just one of the cogs in the big machine, as we say in English, I suppose. Right. So anyway, well, thanks, Ivan, for coming on and talking about this.
Oh,
There was just one thing I wanted to mention. We talked a while ago about, well, in this podcast we talked about, but we also mentioned the route via the Spanish grandparents stopping in October 2025. And again, people, this is, as I understand it, somebody from the Spanish government said, and I think it was when they were in Argentina, but that doesn't matter. But they said there may be a new law for Spanish grandparents coming in that's going to be permanent in the summer of 2026. But as I understand it, Ivan, there's no actual physical law in place. It's just something the government have said.
not yet that we know of. Although,
Yeah.
for example, this royal decree that intended to regularize hundreds and hundreds of thousands of immigrants was actually started with a rumor, and now the Socialist political party intends to carry it out. So who
Right.
knows? It might be
Yeah.
a few months or most likely a few years before we
Right.
actually hear of the law.
And again, the Spanish government, as we stand here in January, is a coalition of different parties. Without being political, these parties lean to the left of centre. But there are, I think the Spanish elections, are the Spanish elections next year in 2027?
So I think, yes.
Yeah. So again, you could be listening to this podcast in the future, but so just bear that in mind, because there could be some political change. And I'm not saying the new government are going to take a different view. They may support the plans of the original government. Nobody knows. That's why we don't like commenting on laws that are not enforced.
Unfortunately, it
But of
might
course,
shift. Absolutely.
yeah, but of course, on the Move to Spain Facebook group, everybody likes to talk about things like that, and the TikTok channel and Instagram and things like that. So, yeah, we mention it. But we have enough to worry about with the laws that we already have. Yeah, right. Okay, Ivan, well, thanks for coming on. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day at work. Well, could be worse.
As much as I
Okay.
can. I
All
usually
right.
do. Thank you very much for having me, John. I hope you have
Thank
a
you.
wonderful day.
You too. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye bye.